Okay.
All right, Karen, there you go.
The official welcome. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for coming. This is our fall general membership meeting. I know it seems that we have had an enormous number of meetings, but it's a bargaining year and that happens. This is our normal one. And we will be going through some of the chapter business and also uh, giving you an opportunity to ask questions and talk about things that you would like us to think about or do or whatever. So I want to begin by saying this has been a very difficult year, and I understand that. And I hope that the union has helped to make your year somewhat less difficult. And hopefully we can continue to do that and can actually improve your lives a little bit. Um, and so I am very thankful that you've all come today to help us figure out a future for the institution, the AAUP, not Oakland University. We have to share responsibility for that piece. But I want to just get right down to business because I know some of you have Senate meetings at 3 o'clock. So you might want to actually go to those because those are also important. First, I'd like to begin. We have always what is called a contract officer for the chapter. That person is Diane Hartmus. She has served as our contract officer for several years now. The contract officer's role is twofold. Number one, to help the executive committee understand the interpretation of the contract. And so the contract officer is there during meetings to make sure that we are not doing things in violation of our contract, but also to help members because our contract, it's a long and complicated document that has evolved over many decades and is sometimes very difficult to interpret. And so we want to make sure that you have, as members, a resource to go to ask specific questions about the contract without having to go through me or having to go through Amy. And so you are all please encouraged if you have concerns about what this means. What does this provision mean? How do I interpret it? How does it operate? You certainly can ask either Amy or Amy or me, excuse me. And we'll do our very best to answer, but we will also probably encourage that you talk to Diane because she does know the contract really well. We like to have somebody in that role who actually is a lawyer and has some greater familiarity in terms of contract law and that sort of thing. So, and she is that. So she will be our continuing proposed, she is our continuing proposed contract officer. Sadly, she could not come to the meeting today because she is teaching. And so she would normally be here and sort of say a few words on behalf of her commitment to the institution, the AAUP, but also cannot do that because she's teaching and that's what she likes to do. Not that she doesn't like to come to meetings, but so that is the one piece of EC news that needs to be passed on to the or to the membership. We also have some updates on chapter issues. The 2021-24 contract TA was ratified by the board. That happened on October the 11th. The vote was 1 abstention and otherwise unanimously in favor. So we are now working under that contract officially. You should have received salary letters. Those went out earlier this week.
If you're a full-time faculty member.
If you're a full-time faculty, I'm sorry, yes. SLs get a different kind of letter. But if you have not received that letter, please inform us and we will make sure you get it. Also check the numbers. The merit score should have been based on the merit score that you most recently submitted. We made an effort at the table to have accommodations to the previous merit score as well, since we had a 0% raise in that 1-year extension. We had been hoping that the university would acknowledge that people had done really hard work and should be rewarded for that, but our team could not convince their team that that was a good idea. And so the merit raise is based on the most recent one, not on the last two. Also we do encourage, and we encourage this all of the time. The letters, there was a question, letters should be sent via email. So it should be in your email. If you didn't get it, check your spam folder, you never know. It should not have gone to your spam folder, but we never know. Check the math. It has been our experience that the math is not necessarily correct. And this is not just true for raises. This is also, we've had a couple of cases of promotion raises not being included in the paycheck and other kinds of things. If you get extra pay for being a director of something, or these things sometimes get negotiated. And so those sometimes also do not get included. So it is a very good idea to check the math every now and then. You probably only should have to do that at tops once a semester. And if you're not taking on additional duties or being promoted or that sort of thing, it's really once a year. It's very easy for us to get corrections made if you tell us right away. Or if you can contact Academic Human Resources, usually individuals can get those corrected right away. The problem is when you don't notice it and don't tell anyone for months, that then makes it more and more legally difficult for us to make sure that you get any back pay that you are owed. And so we do encourage you to routinely, particularly in the fall, because people's pay changes in the fall routinely. So now it's like, cleaning out your office in August kind of thing. And someone did have a hand raised and I was trying to finish that idea.
Well, I asked him to hold on to it till the end.
Okay, great. Cool.
But I do can I say two things about merit that I'd love full-time faculty members to check on? One is to make sure that the correct year score is used, right? That it's this one that you turned in May 2021. The other big one is to make sure that the merit score that you get in that letter from Joy Cunningham is the merit score you are expecting. If it was lowered and you were not notified that it was lowered and didn't get a chance to fight against the lowering of that score, that is a problem. That is a grievable thing. So if your score is different than what your unit turned into Oakland, please make sure you notify me and Karen so we can track it down and figure out what happened there. And a question about how do you check your score? You really, the distribution in each group is different. So you have to contact your dean's office to get an understanding of how the distribution works in each one of the different groups. And Joe, really quickly to your question, chairperson merit scores are completely, there are no merit scores for chairpersons. Chairperson merit raises are completely at the will of Oakland University to do however and whatever they want. I'm done now, Karen. That's enough merit.
Yes. So anyway, but you should do that every year, not just, because it does happen. And I have some empathy, a little bit of empathy. Because they are processing a lot of paper and sometimes you get distracted and do the wrong thing, but that's okay. We will allow them an opportunity to correct their mistakes and then we will get mad at them if they don't. So Mask and vaccine mandate. We have been working with the provost's office since before the beginning of the term over the mask and vaccine mandates. We still are having some problem with masking in public areas enclosed. It seems to be worse in some units than in others. So there are some majors apparently where there's much more resistance to the idea of having to wear masks. But also we're seeing a greater tension lately has been in public areas like in the library and in the OC. The classrooms are starting maybe to sort themselves out. However, there's a however. We are working with the administration to try to get them to be more assertive in enforcing the mask mandate in these public areas. Anecdotally, I've walked through the library and the OC, and you will see, tens of people who are not eating but don't have their masks on. And I'm told similar things can be seen in the library. We still are having some problems of masking in the classrooms. We would strongly ask you, if we're trying to gather information on where the problems exist. So if you have students who are refusing to keep their masks on, who are coming to class without masks, et cetera, please contact the Dean of Students office. We are not always seeing follow-up being as systematic and transparent as we think it should be. We would certainly, if you are having concerns, if you reported somebody as not masking in your classroom or in other ways violating the mask mandate, and this Dean of Students does not seem to be intervening in a constructive, positive way, we want to know about that immediately. That we have had many cases so far this semester where there have been extraordinary long delays in actually contacting students. We have had problems with lack of communication with faculty members over masking issues. And we are trying to stay on top of those as much as we can and try to do our very best to get the Dean of Students office to be more assertive, I think is the word I'm going to use today. So please pass on any information, any problems that you're having. The vaccine mandate is also interesting. The vaccine mandate, hypothetically, everyone was to have had either both doses or a complete vaccination course for COVID by October the 8th, or have at least a temporary exemption. We still have a fairly large number of students. The last number that we heard was over 1,700 had neither submitted their vaccination cards nor had they done the paperwork to get an exemption. It is the responsibility of the Dean of Students office and Graham Health Center to contact those students and to do something about that. In other words, get them to upload their documents if they have them, get them to take the vaccine if they haven't, and to, in some way comply with the mandate. However, that process is extraordinarily long and drawn out, and we were told at a recent meeting with the provost that the disenrollment of students will not occur until January the 7th. Yes, those of you who are making funny faces into the camera, that was very similar to the funny face that I made when I was first told this. This has been very frustrating for us. I will also point out the students who have an exemption. We had a large number of students who got medical exemptions, but more importantly, we got an even larger number of students who got religious exemptions. They are required to be tested weekly. They're being tested by an outside vendor who apparently has a great deal of experience with this and is supposed to be very good. We are monitoring this situation to make sure that students who are required to be tested every week, in fact, are being tested every week, and that they are, when they are found to have COVID, are not coming onto campus. So we are doing the best with the situation that we have. We are continuing to work with the administration to convince them that we can be more rigorous in our public health approach. We have been somewhat successful, though not terribly.
Can I add a couple things?
Yes, please.
Okay. One thing that we have discovered is that Graham Health Center doesn't usually answer their phones. So FYI, don't just keep trying to call back, either leave a message, or there's 3 different ways to report. You can either call and leave a message. I believe you could do it through the daily screening form. And then I think there's one other online format.
Yeah.
Pardon me? Yeah, there's a submission
there's
form.
a way that you can, there's a
Portal.
they call it the portal, but it's where you upload information. It's also, if for students, it's where you make an appointment with Graham Health Center and so on and so forth.
So just be aware that Graham Health Center does not seem to generally answer the phone, but if you leave a message, you should get a phone call back. As far as we've had issues with notification about COVID positives in your classroom, and the answer we are getting from Graham Health Center is that if a student comes to them and tells them they are positive, all of the contact tracing is done solely through the student. And so it is the student's obligation to tell Graham Health Center, who is within 6 feet of them in that classroom. And that is the only reporting that is done, which we see is really faulty in a bunch of ways. First of all, it assumes that students actually know the names of all the students in their general vicinity. It assumes students sort of have an understanding of what 6 feet of social distancing actually looks like and feels like in a classroom. And it assumes that students know, in fact, who was there on whichever given days. So we're trying to point out the flaws of the sort of contact tracing in the way they're doing it. It would be much more effective if they relied on the systems that are used in K-12 in this situation. It makes sense to go to the faculty member, and they're the ones, if they're expecting faculty to keep track of attendance because of contact tracing, then they should be going to the faculty member with this, and they're not. So we're trying to work on getting, at least we got clarification of what they're doing. That was one step. And then the last thing is that we do still have an active unfair labor practice charge against the university, which we're trying to wrap up. It was not against the mandate. It was against the fact that Oakland didn't negotiate the impact of that mandate on our members. And we've gone around in circles and circles and circles with them. There's a couple of important pieces to it. One, it sort of explains what's going to happen if faculty don't comply ultimately, eventually. Again, that won't be until January where it'll be relevant. There is a clause in there that sort of, in the contract, there's a piece where if you took a sabbatical, you owe the university 2 more years after the sabbatical. And if you leave the university, 2 more semesters, I'm sorry. And if you leave the university before those 2 semesters are up, you're going to owe Oakland all the back pay and compensation. And one of the things we got put into the LOA to resolve the unfair labor practice charge is that clause won't apply if you leave the university based on the mandate itself. And the other thing we're really fighting about is about notification in the classrooms. We want our faculty to know what percentage of students in the classroom are not vaccinated. And we're going around in circles with numbers. And at this point, I think classes with more than 25 or more students are going to get notification just about percentages in their classes. But we're still bickering back and forth about at what level that notification is going to occur. So that should be resolved soon. And whenever it is, we will share it with the membership. And a bunch of people asked the question in the thread, and I'm actually super curious about this as well, about the fact that people are always supposed to be masked indoors, but at all of the big public shiny events, speakers keep taking their masks off to speak. And they do it at the Board of Trustees all the time too. So I think we'll ask just for point of clarification to see what answer they give us as to why that should be okay.
Mhm. Yeah, that has been an issue. At the board meeting, I was the only person who kept the mask on to speak, including the president, including, I mean, so I guess if they have COVID, they could spread it to the members of the board and that would be fine because that's the way the room is set up. But okay, anyway. Um, okay, workplace satisfaction survey results. You should have received the summary of that workplace satisfaction survey. It did not speak well to our relationship with the administration. There was only one question where a majority of the faculty were not expressing dissatisfaction. We also then sent copies of that to every member of the Board of Trustees. That it was, we made reference to it in my October the 11th address to the board, though you only have 2 minutes on those. So there's not very much there's not much detail you can go into. And so that's why we made sure that they got copies of it. We are hoping that that negativity and the sort of, broader faculty dissatisfaction with the university and with the university leadership is going to start changing things. So that was a major effort on our part to start pressuring for specific changes. There have been a number of formal and informal conversations about how to change things. There was apparently, I actually did not see the president's address this morning. I was getting ready for another meeting. And evidently, there is going to be a new initiative about greater transparency in budgeting. I'm not entirely confident that that will happen, but now that they've put that out there, we will start pushing on it. And we're going to continue to work in other areas to try to create an environment where there is greater confidence by the faculty towards the administration. We want to have an administration that we can trust and that we can believe is advocating for us and believe is not due.
That'll last until the next contract, right?
Well, I don't know.
Well, we're not even there yet. So
We're not there yet.
One
We're
step
not
at a
there.
time.
One step at a time.
You're not wrong, Janelle.
Yeah, but yeah, I've been here long enough to go through long periods of depression. Let's see, we are, so certainly we will be continuing to press those numbers at the administration and work to see if we can't get some significant change. We have also begun a major advocacy program where we are trying to shift the balance of power. We are trying to elevate the relative strength of faculty in terms of dealing with the administration. And Amy is, as we speak, there we go. This is a flyer that we've designed to help people understand what our strategy is. We are working at many levels. We do want to strengthen our relationship with Oakland partners, particularly the Student Congress. Right now we have a student body that is almost as upset with the university as we are. And we are hoping to come up with some joint initiatives with the current student government. There was just a major shift. The former president and vice president resigned over a number of internal issues. And they just elected a new president and vice president. We have a meeting scheduled with them, but they want to have a much more scheduled, a much more regular interaction with faculty representation from the AAUP, because they have the same faith in the administration that we have. So we're going to continue to work with them as long as they're willing to work with us. Also, we're going to begin working with various OU alumni groups that exist outside of the Alumni Association, and see if we can't also develop greater and greater support with those people who have a sort of direct interest in Oakland. We have also initiated meetings with the other representatives of campus employment groups. We actually just had our first meeting today, which was, on one level, it was very depressing because we're all sort of angry and depressed in the same way. But we all came out of that meeting understanding the commonality that the police and the custodial staff and the CTs and the APs are not unionized, but they did send a representative. And so I have a great deal of hope that we can begin to work collectively, because what became obviously apparent this year was that the administration was very much pitting one collective bargaining group against the other, and saying, you know, they were trying to get the CTs to lower their healthcare coverage, and then use that as a, well, that wouldn't be fair to the CTs if you demanded to maintain your 95% coverage. And those kinds of issues were going on with all of the unions, that other unions were asking for tuition, and then were being denied that because, you know, they were, I think that was part of the impetus behind trying to get rid of our tuition benefits, was so that they could undercut the benefits that exist for other labor unions. So we plan to continue to work collectively to share information, particularly during bargaining, but also to work as much as we can to make sure that all of us are stronger together than we are separately. We are also working to build legislative connections. We've scheduled meetings with a couple of representatives from the Michigan State Legislature. We are also meeting, there's a meeting being scheduled for us with the Labor Caucus, which is a group that was very supportive of us during the bargaining, and we will be continuing to work with them. Our primary interest in working for legislative connections are twofold. Number one, we believe that a lot of our problems rest with difficulties with the Board of Trustees, and that has to do with the quality of folks who are serving on the board. And part of this is there's a long-standing issue at the board of, and it's not just Oakland, by the way, it's all of the appointed boards. People get appointed not because they're particularly interested in higher ed, but because they're owed a political favor, and they come in with political agendas, or, you know, this is, you know, we had one guy years ago who was on the Board of Trustees because he liked to sort of show off his basketball team to his clients. And so what we want to do is have more responsible boards that understand the university better, are willing to listen to all the constituencies of the university, and to be more helpful in creating a better Oakland. We believe that legislators can help us pressure the governor's office in ways that we alone cannot pressure the governor's office. We do have inroads to the governor, but we are one of many, many voices that are constantly pummeling her for favors and so on and so forth. And so we're hoping that if we have legislators who can then sort of tie this to larger agendas, that's our hope, that this will be useful. In addition, we hope in terms of the long run of Michigan higher ed, that we have better state appropriations for higher ed. And so we are trying to build support within the Michigan legislature so that they are more careful in Lansing in terms of appropriations to the state institutions, and particularly the regionals, because we tend to get what's left over. So we're very much committed to this as a kind of long-term goal. But right now we're making new best friends and working up a coalition there. And I will point out, somebody asked in another meeting, we are so far only scheduling meetings with Democrats because they're the ones who expressed an interest in meeting with us. And certainly we will continue to move forward to try to get members of other parties to work with us as well. We don't see this as a partisan thing. We see this as who wants to talk to representatives of the faculty union. And the Democrats are more willing to do that. At this point, I'm hoping that that will change over time. That we are also working with media sources, the national, local, and higher education media outlets, trying to make sure that the story of Oakland does not disappear until we go into our next bargaining sessions. And we're going to be working with national agencies in terms of strategy. So we're working also at the same time with other educational unions in Michigan, but also the national AAUP and the AFT and so on and so forth. We are hoping that collectively we can not just lobby in the state, but also lobby nationally. Basically, the AAUP National has undertaken a stronger policy in terms of lobbying in the Washington Congress. And they are hoping that they can then coordinate with various state organizations to then have a kind of two-prong approach in terms of budget allocations and law, that sort of thing. So we have that going on, and that coordination is going to continue. Also, I will point out, we are in the process of reconstituting the AAUP Michigan State Conference. It existed about 10 years ago. It went moribund, and for a variety of reasons. And the folks at Wayne and Eastern and us are working together to build together to create a new state conference that will be more vibrant. We will have our first state meeting. We're currently scheduling it probably in early March. And as we know more about that, we will get in touch with all of you. And so in terms of our long-term goals, we are very much looking at this idea of working with legislators to improve our situation, to work with OU alumni, to create a more favorable public climate around Oakland and around Oakland's faculty in particular. And we are going to try to collaborate as much as we can to make sure that our interests are covered in the long run. I don't ever want my colleagues to have to go through what we've been through this year. And I'm primarily focused on trying to figure out how to make sure that we can prevent that from happening again in the future. So that's our advocacy working plan.
Can I add in a couple pieces?
Absolutely.
So one of the things I just want to make sure that folks know that's happening in regards to national AAUP is National AAUP has really stepped up in the past year in terms of education for its chapters. So one of the things they were doing was a bargaining cohort for leaders who were going into bargaining. So I know Doug Wendell and I took advantage of that. And that was a several-month-long course we took with other union leaders around the country, led by national organizers. They're also doing a grievance and contract officer enforcement cohort, and Jen Thor, our grievance officer, is taking part in that. So we're really trying to take advantage of the new opportunities that National is offering for that kind of education, and being able to know what's happening around the country at different unions is incredibly helpful. Another thing, when we talk about the Board of Trustees, one of the major problems with the Board of Trustees, I mean, there's so many problems, but one of the major issues we're encountering is that we need to come up with good names. We need to get people to apply, because that's how the Board of Trustees, if you want to be a Board of Trustees, you apply. There's an application on the state website, and then the governor's office will do interviews, and they ultimately select someone. But if we can get the right people applying for these positions, if we can get the right people doing interviews with the governor's office, we have more of a chance of securing faculty-friendly Board of Trustees members. So if you have any suggestions of people who you think would make good Board of Trustees candidates, particularly OU alumni, I believe 3 of our Board of Trustees right now are alumni, who are sort of, prominent in business or in some other industry. If there's a prominent business person in the metro sort of Detroit area, the Tri-County area, if there's anyone you can think of, shoot me an email and I'll investigate it and reach out. Because the more names we have, the more we can sort of fill the line up, because we should have 3 to 4 Board of Trustee appointments over the next 4 years. So, and then the last thing I wanted to say, just in terms of raising and maintaining awareness about Oakland's finances, we do intend to keep the pressure on. So for example, we have 2 FOIAs that are in the works with Oakland, trying to make sure that they know that we constantly want this information. I can send a FOIA every week if I need to, if they don't want to give us the information. I'm very capable of sending lots of pieces of paper out. So that's one of the ways in which we'll sort of keep that up. And I think those were the things I wrote down while you were talking, Karen.
So that's what we've been doing over the last several weeks. That's the direction we hope to be going in. And so at that point, I would like to ask, is there any new business that needs to be brought before before me or to the general membership?
Is there, Karen, from yesterday, and I talked to some faculty, I'd like to make a motion for a survey of no confidence vote. So the membership is actually, some of them are relieved because they keep on asking the same thing. And possible vote depending upon how many people respond.
Okay.
So I'd like to make that motion in this meeting.
If I can just interject for a second, I completely understand that sentiment. I do want to talk with people at other institutions who have done this before to come up with a good strategy, and I promise I will do that. But if you want to make that as a motion, I'm going to ask that you not be too specific about that question, because we may have to do this a little bit more subtly to make it more effective.
Yeah, but you don't have to do it, execute it. Actually, a survey, just asking question that if membership supports, and I'm sure some members keep on asking it. That's why I'm in the advisory committee and like to make the motion so you can open up for discussion, right? I mean, there's no harm on it.
Okay, Tom?
Hey, sorry, I've just got a minute. I want to address this issue of asking the union to do a no confidence vote or even a survey of same. Many of you will know that I have a long history of going back with our president. If you were on the advisory forum when I was vice president, I had a chance to meet with her in an interview. And I believe that she was singularly unqualified to become a university president, and I said so at the time. I think that everything that has happened since then has sort of borne out that impression. So I want to say that I will see your no confidence and raise you a lack of faith in our current administration. Also, I think that most of you who are here will know that I tend to believe that unions should always try to do more rather than less, that I have been willing to take on issues that are outside of wages and benefits for the membership of this union. All that being said, I think that it is not the place of the union to organize a no confidence vote in this administration. Frankly, I don't think it would be effectual. As a matter of fact, I think probably very much the opposite, especially coming out of our last very contentious strike in this fall. At this point, I think all that would take place would be someone reporting the news that a union doesn't like the management of the institution that it's a member of. And at that point, it simply becomes, well, film at 11. Why would I report on something like that? The proper vehicle for something like that would obviously be a faculty senate, and in a non-dysfunctional institution, that would be the place to have this decision take place. But we don't work in a place like that. So there needs to be some other mechanism. I don't think that it's the right place for the union to take this on.
Janelle?
Hi, thanks. I still haven't ever figured out what anybody's asking for no confidence votes for either. I agree with Tom, maybe for different reasons, but mostly because I just don't see what the point is. Like, what are you going to get out of it? We're not going to get more money, but that's a whole different story, right? So probably my question is not, or my potential suggestion based on the response to my question isn't going to be taken well initially, but think about it. It's just an idea, just going to put it out there, is, it's my understanding that we should have a pretty substantial bank account. Sure, we maybe spent a bit with this last round of contract negotiations, but maybe to help mitigate the effects of this contract, we could distribute some of that money back to the faculty rather than leave it sitting there. I mean, I know it was more than $1 million, and with the way I don't know how it's invested, but it's a lot of dough, and we're never going to strike for very long. I mean, that was clear to me from this past situation, is that they're going to order us back to work. And if they don't, I mean, what are we going to do with that money anyway? We might as well give it back. I mean, obviously we need enough for our operating expenses and a cushion. So maybe it should be some sort of an analysis of what we really need to have versus what we do have. So that's what I'm going to throw out there. And I guess, how much do we have and how much do we actually need to have? This is two questions. So.
It's actually a survey. I didn't talk about the vote. So survey is no harm, right, Tom? You're not doing a vote right now.
See, again, I don't think that the union is the right instrument to distribute a survey like that.
Well, you are doing it for workplace satisfaction. I don't understand.
Because workplace satisfaction is very specific to the conditions of work. If, Janelle made a very good point. I mean, what are the things that we are talking about in terms of no confidence? So you have to divide up your identity between being an employee and being a faculty member. If you're saying that you have no confidence in the leadership of the institution, you have to be saying that in your role as a faculty member, that she is unqualified or has been derelict in her responsibilities as a leader of the faculty and of the institution. If you're bitching about wages, that's a completely separate issue.
I'd like to oh, sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the chat. I don't think it is our only tool. Or I know it has that sense, and this has been, this is obviously a problem because we don't have a faculty senate. We don't have a body that speaks for the faculty qua faculty, right? As members of an academic body. All we have is the union, which speaks to us in our capacity as employees. And the fact of the matter is, a group of employees saying that they don't like management is just not a terribly effective device for expressing our displeasure. However, if we are a group of faculty who are calling into question the ability of our administration to lead an institution of higher learning, then I think we have a separate case to make.
I want to just really quickly return to Janelle's point, because this is something we just barely started talking about, the idea of using some of the union's money to start doing something proactive with it. I'm not sure if the idea of paying, partial salaries back is a great one, because the comment in the chat, we're literally setting a precedent for Oakland saying if we don't do it, they'll do it. But there are lots of other things we could do. We talked about maybe doing our own scholarship fund. We talked about, maybe a childcare thing, or maybe, last year when we encouraged the university to start the pandemic fund, some type of fund like that. And I think that's something that is definitely worth exploring, and definitely something that we have money to do something with it. And I think Janelle's in the right direction. I think that's a good idea.
So I don't know that necessarily thinking of the salary replacement, that was a little bit of a joke, I suppose. I guess I would consider it to be more of a dividend or a return of funds, like based on a percentage of what I put in, give me that back. Like yeah, that's how I see it.
And I will say, in the past, that's what we see the dues holidays as. That we
like in the summer, I get killed in the summer. I mean, it's because all summer pay is considered on top of my regular salary. So like for 2 months, I get, I pay a lot. I mean, granted, I do okay relative to other faculty members. I get that. I don't have, I'm not making comments about it. It's more just the issue of, well, if I could use it back, everybody could, right? I mean, maybe we give summers off, or
and
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of money sitting there that, yeah.
And I will say that we are beginning, we've been sort of totally, swamped with the bargaining and so on, but that is, we always do in the winter go through budgetary analyses internally and talk about what we, can do with what we have and what we need to think about in terms of future spending. And so I actually think this is an interesting idea, and I'm hoping that the EC can start to talk about these ideas and, work forward to do something that we think will help the membership. So,
And Karen will let you know that my favorite thing to do is make more work for myself. So it drives Karen nuts, but I think it's a good idea. So Shaturi, your hand is blended into your background there.
So I would just to just follow up there. So I would suggest maybe asking one of the accounting faculty, perhaps, or a finance faculty, to take a look and do an actual, an analysis, and or maybe even somebody who's from actuarial perspective of what do we actually need to have on hand relative to what we do have on hand.
Yeah, and that is what we typically do. One of the advantages of being in a faculty union is that we have astonishing breadth of expertise that we like to call on whenever possible. So we always, whenever we do these kinds of things, we do check with people who do have that kind of expertise to help us. So yeah, Chitori.
Yeah, so I wanted to offer my perspective, not as a former bargaining team member, but just my personal perspective in response to Janelle. I think it would be incredibly the incorrect strategy for the union to disperse funds. And I think in the chat, Holly said this. And I don't know, Holly, but I want to echo that because I think that is my perspective as well, because that would truly undercut our power at the bargaining table. If the administration knows that if there is a discrepancy or amount that we are not happy with, if the union is going to step in and cover that. So I don't support that.
Again, I wasn't talking about it as salary replacement. That was a bit of a joke, and I shouldn't have used that terminology. But there's cash there that's not being deployed effectively. So
I
if it's not being
understand that,
deployed,
so-
that's all I'm talking about.
Sure,
Maybe
but
so.
if I may continue, Janelle, I do like the idea of the holidays. I think that makes much more sense to me. But any time I think that we try to, undermine the bargaining that can happen in terms of equitable salary, then that's a problem. And I don't think that's the message that we want the administration to hear. So this is not to get something against Janelle's idea, because I think it is important to creatively think about it. But I think any kind of posturing in this area would be problematic going forward.
I'm trying to read through the chat just to see if I missed anything. I don't think I've missed any specific questions. I could be wrong.
Mhm.
I had put a question in there about the like the university's 2021 net position increase of 72 million. And I was curious if we know how that stacks up against other years.
We do know that compared to other years, it's very strong. Stock market did very well this year. And so any university or any institution that had a lot of money in their portfolio in various things that kind of derive their value from stock did really well. However, according to the accounting firm that is responsible for our endowment account, we did better than most universities. And so everybody did really well this year. So in that sense, it's useful to compare this year to last year or the year before. But I think it's also, in this particular case, important to look at, how we did versus how other institutions did. In the June preliminary report, it was at the board, it was said that we performed, our endowment was performing better than almost every university in the country. We have compared to Harvard, we have a small endowment. Compared to even to MSU, we have a small endowment, but the performance was really high. I don't know if any of you attended the board meeting in October, but they were doing that presentation, the formal presentation of the final numbers. And the thing that really struck me was, number one, how happy and proud of themselves everyone seemed to be that, oh, we perform so well. And we, not only in the endowment fund, but actually in the operating fund, there was significant improvement. Was it 8 million? I can't remember off the top of my head. I didn't write those figures down for this meeting, sorry.
I'm sorry, which one? Which fund?
The operating fund.
It was up over 8%.
8%, I'm sorry. Okay. And which, usually your operating fund is, you're cutting it below 3% usually, if you're budgeting well. And that had to do with the investments that they had made, because they put shorter term investments in the operating fund so that hopefully they can generate a little extra money. And so, you know, when both of those funds run so well and they're so happy about that, and then they keep talking about this, you know, it was 17%, now it's 16% hit that we're supposed to all be taking. And during the board meeting, there was no conversation going on about, well, geez, can we use this money to mitigate whatever? Maybe we don't have to have a tuition increase next year. Nobody was suggesting that. And I think part of that is board behavior. They like to make all of these decisions privately and not in big public meetings. But also, I think that's not where their mind goes. They don't think about how can we benefit the various constituencies of Oakland University? How do we make faculty salaries go up? How do we create better benefits? How do we create a better research environment? That's not how their brains work. And this is one reason why I have become so focused on the Board of Trustees and trying to find a better quality of board member. So anyway, yeah, we're not doing, you know, our enrollment is down. No way to get around that. Our enrollment is down. Our enrollment is not going to be great 10 years from now because we're going through this demographic cliff. If we don't do anything, if we don't change anything else. But that doesn't mean you can't change things in terms of the demographic cliff. And I'm not hearing anything from anybody about what they might be, not since George Hind was president. And that's 1 year. The cliff has a lot to do with the COVID cliff. We have fewer students because so many kids had the choice between continuing to go online to U of M or MSU or Oberlin or Columbia or whatever. And they were going to be in their father's basement anyway. So they went to their home institutions and found out that they would transfer in the credits from Oakland. And so that's why we had a big uptick last year. That's why we didn't lose as many students last year. And surprisingly, some of them went back to Oberlin and MSU and Columbia. And we don't have their money now. And yeah, I'm sorry they didn't stay here because I think we actually do provide pretty decent education and really good when you consider how much we pay, it costs. But
I just want to give you a time check. It's 3:01. I know a lot of people need to
it's
get to Senate.
3:01, yes.
It is. Just really quickly, someone said, retired faculty be considered for Board of Trustees? Absolutely. A lot of retired faculty don't want to do it. But if we could get them to do it, it would be fantastic.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure I'm going to turn it over to you to wrap up so we can get people over to Senate.
Okay. Yes. So anyway, yes, I'm always sorry to cut these meetings short. So thank you all for your comments. We actually do, when people ask us questions, we actually do pay attention and we actually try to do things. If there's anything you think we ought to know, please tell us. We have one last piece of good and welfare. There's an advisory forum meeting on Monday, October the 25th. So if you have anything that you want brought before the advisory forum, go send an email to your advisory forum rep and say, bring this up at the meeting. Ask other people, is this important? Certainly feel free to contact either Amy or I, and we will do our very best to try to come up with some kind of reasonable solution. So, despite COVID and all the insanity of COVIDness and our administration, who seems to think if we were just more civil and we'd just apologize to the president, we'd be fine. So I'll stop there and won't go off on my rant. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
I can't get into your computer without a password. Oh, okay. I'll